Hey, y'all, I'm Austin with Bourbon Earring.
Hey, and it's Bert with Fours and Pours.
And today we're drinking allocated bottles.
Allocated, but attainable.
Yeah, so we each brought in 2 bottles. I brought in this Woodford Reserve Batch Proof and this Remus Repeal Batch.
And I brought over some E.H. Taylor Single Barrel and Parker's Heritage Orange Curacao.
So our reasoning behind this, these are bottles that we felt, yeah, they're allocated, they're hard to get, but they're not impossible to get. There's definitely a process to get them. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through, we're going to taste these, we're going to talk about them, and then we're going to rank them 1 through 4. But how are we going to base it?
So we're going to rank them on a combination of affordability, availability, and taste.
Of course. Yeah, so affordability, we're going to look at retail or the price you'd pay if you go through what we did to get these bottles.
Yeah. As far as availability goes, none of these bottles are unicorns, right?
No, not at all. I mean, we obtained these bottles from the source, maybe?
Yeah, I would say every bottle that we got here was purchased at retail price.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead. We're going to pour ourselves a sampling of all 4 of these. We'll talk about the notes, hit the fast forward button, and we'll catch you after we're done drinking. Just wanted to slow the video down and show everybody this is a fresh crack on this single barrel.
Beautiful.
I love it.
Beautiful.
Well, I don't know what you want me to say. I mean, so that was 4 ounces of pretty much high-proof bourbon in about 15 minutes.
Lord.
It might have been 30 seconds or give or take for you guys, but it was a lot longer than that.
We have a lot on camera that you're not going to see. I'll guarantee that.
But I do feel like I have an understanding of how I want to rank these.
Yeah, and so we caught a little audible while we were talking because we were having too much good discussion off camera.
Yeah.
Or off mic. So we didn't tell each other what we ranked these. We made a list. We checked it twice. Gonna find out who's been naughty. And sorry.
I'm editing that. I probably won't, but I should.
Whew, all right.
Bourbon's hitting fast today. Did you eat lunch?
Yeah, I did. I had a lot of mashed potatoes.
All right, guys. I'm going to quit looking at Austin because he can't handle me looking at it while he's trying to speak.
So we both made a list. We're going to tell each other on camera here for the first time. And we're going to argue about it. Probably argue about it really hard.
I doubt we argue about it.
Well,
but how about this? Before we do our total ranking, encompassing all three, affordability, availability, and taste, what would you say is your favorite from a taste-only perspective? Like, what do you think is the best bourbon on this table?
The E.H. Taylor. That to me, I was telling you this, that to me is classic bourbon. It reminds me of the holidays, and I think that's because every time we have those Christmas raffles in person, which we haven't had in a few years, we get together, somebody wins that bottle, somebody opens that bottle, and we share it amongst friends. That reminds me of Christmas, it reminds me of friends, and it just tastes delicious.
Right. Now, look, I asked that specifically so we could have one thing we agreed on before we started doing this. Also, this is my favorite taste-wise by far. I cannot think of a bottle that I associate more with bourbon. Whenever I first started drinking bourbon, like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe longer, this was readily available on the shelf at pretty much every store you could walk into, grocery stores, liquor stores, anywhere. And it was my first high-end purchase. I think the retail was around $64.
Ooh, breaking the bank right there.
$64.99. So that was my first high-end purchase back then.
Yeah. I mean, even I, being so young into this game, remember this being on the shelf. I remember small batch being, everybody can grab it. So I'm sad to see it's allocated, but I'm also happy that people are enjoying it,
Yeah, for sure.
All right, real quick, we're going to go through each of these, kind of give our tasting notes, what we thought about the whiskey, and then we'll go and give our ranking. So what'd you think about the Remus?
I think the Repeal I think, I'm going to leave that in.
Yep.
I think the Repeal Batch is really good. Mm-hmm. If you're a fan of high rye bourbon, so if you don't know, the Repeal Batch is a mix of 4 or 5 high rye bourbons. I think the lowest is 21% rye, and it goes all the way up to 36% rye, and that's actually over half the mash bill is made up of over 36% rye. So
yeah, and I think every year the blend's a little bit different. So year to year, this one is 2021's release, so it's the most recent one. But I love it. I like anything MGP, High Rye Bourbon. This hits the nail on the head. And if you can get it at retail, it's a pretty decent price. If I remember correctly, it's around $70-$80.
Now, you had an interesting note, too, whenever we were drinking it, is it doesn't taste like your typical MGP. I
tried it. The first time I ever tried it blind, I would have guessed it was something from Barton from 1792. It's got that banana note to me. And I love that.
And see, I pull a little more of the cinnamon. I do get the MGP notes. I pull a little more of the cinnamon. I definitely nose the wheat. And it has that grassy earthiness to it on the front of the palate that you get with a higher rye bourbon. So overall, though, I think it's delicious.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I've kind of given my notes on the Taylor, kind of what I thought about it. It's classic bourbon to me. Yeah. Of course, it's Buffalo Trace, and it has that stigma to it. But Buffalo Trace makes good juice, and I'm not going to deny that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I already said it, Taylor, the single barrel is one of my all-time favorite bourbons. I think it's in my top 5. We were talking off camera. I absolutely love it. It's got a deep, oaky chocolatiness to it. It noses and it sips like a classic high-end bourbon. It's sweet, but not too sweet. I think the proof coming in at 100 is right around what it needs to really excel. And I'll be honest, this is Mash Bill 1, right?
Yep.
Mash Bill 1. So it's the same as Eagle Rare, Buffalo Trace, Stag, some of the other products coming out of Buffalo Trace. But it really sings a different note than all of those.
Yeah, and this and the Remus were both at 100 proof. The Remus was way hotter. The Taylor was way cooler, if you will. Yeah. But the flavors were still punching up at that 100 proof, and it's fantastic.
Definitely. What about the Parkers? I mean, what are your thoughts on the Parkers? This one's a little more unique. So you'll typically get something like this by actually going to the distillery. They release a lot of their special finishes there. What are your thoughts on that?
So I had to explain to Bert what a Terry's chocolate orange is. Please let me know down in the comments if you're watching this or wherever you're seeing this, if you know what a Terry's chocolate orange is. That's my kind of tasting note there. That and York peppermint patty. It's strange, but it is a delicious, delicious, unique pour.
I've actually never heard of like Terrible Terry Tate's chocolatey oranges, but for me, it tastes like it tastes like a mint julep, honestly. You do get the orange note. I mean, it's finished in orange curacao barrels, but the mint does come through. But for me, more of a true mint, like a muddled mint in the bottom of a glass. Like that's the note that sinks through, not something candied. And I love it. So this is one of my favorite bottles. I've been nursing it for about a year now, and I'll probably nurse it for another year until I can get another.
Yeah. All those Parker's finishes are all very different, all unique, but they all hit. They all bring something to the table that you've never seen before. Yeah. All right, what are your thoughts on the Woodford?
Okay, so the Woodford, and I'll save this for my overall ranking. The Woodford gets a lot of hate, right?
Yep.
I have heard people crap all over it for a long time, and I truly don't understand why. I think it's a delicious bourbon. It's 128 proof, 128.3, I believe.
Yep.
Is that right? Yeah.
Exactly.
It's 128.3 proof, and it probably drinks like it's in the 110 range, much, much lighter than even something like this that is 110. The palate on it's really good. I do think it is very standard Woodford Reserve palate. Like I don't find anything unique in it. It tastes like a true cask strength Woodford.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, each batch is a little different. I think it has the best bottle out of them, if you ask me. I'm no graphic designer or anything, but it really, I've been rediscovering the Woodford line completely. Woodford Double Oak has been one of my favorite, but Woodford overall has really grown on me. And this barrel proof, especially in a spirit forward old fashioned, you can't beat it.
I'm sorry, you were saying something?
Okay, I see how it is. But
I'm just kidding.
I mean, I can find this on the shelf at Costco, not that one.
So when you are factoring in availability, because remember, guys, these are all allocated bottles. Like none of these you're going to just walk in and find on the shelf 7 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year.
Right.
You're going to have to hunt a little bit. You're going to have to put in some effort. But whenever you combine how much effort you're going to have to put in, what you're going to pay, and we're talking about MSRP, not secondary market, because we got all of these bottles at retail from a retailer. And then the taste, your rankings can kind of change, right? I mean, look, if availability and affordability didn't come into play, we're talking George T. Stagg, Pappy 15, and William LaRue, right?
Come on now.
Those are the best bourbons. But let's be realistic. We don't all have 30 of those sitting on our shelf.
Right.
So what was your order be?
So I played big into the availability aspect of it because the flavors, like I said earlier, are great. They're different. They're all great. But they're not different enough for me to just drop it in the ranking. My number one, and it's based on availability, is going to be this Woodford. That being said, my number two, because it is my favorite taste-wise in the lineup, is going to be the E.H. Taylor. Again, for availability, I'm going 3 with the Remus, and finally the Parkers. It's good. I know how to get it, but it's more work.
So for me, it's really similar. I'll say availability and affordability doesn't outweigh the taste component on the Taylor for me. So that's going to be my number one. Okay. And it is not crazy unavailable. Yeah, it's really hard to get. Like you're not going to just walk in a store and find it. However, if you build a relationship with a local retailer, if you're willing to maybe stand in line on drop day, you're going to get a couple of these a year. So it's not unattainable. So that's my number one. Number two, for the reason you said, a phenomenal high proof allocated bourbon that you can find literally on the shelf at Costco. It's going to be the Woodford.
Yep. You're not going to find it every day, but when it's there, it's there for a few days. Yeah. You can hear about it, go back in 24 hours, and it should be there.
And for me, it's the last week. It's a tie between the Parkers and the Remus, and that's just because this is significantly better. This is significantly easier to get.
Yep.
I still would never pass this up on a shelf, and I still would never disdain from waiting in line whenever I go to Kentucky to try and get one of these.
Yeah, for sure. It's worth it. Absolutely. If you would tell me all I have to do is wait in line for a week at a distillery to get either of these two bottles, I'd do it in a heartbeat.
All right, guys, that's it for us on this episode of Whiskey Wednesday. We're going to go eat some potato chips and mashed potatoes and try and sober up. We just had a lot of whiskey in a very short period of time.
Yeah, we did. All right, y'all. Cheers.
Cheers.